was born and brought up in a small townland in sort of the Northern Ireland called Achadui, which was 8 miles south of Coleraine in the county of Londonderry. And it was very small, very quiet. His dad was American, he was from Philadelphia, and he'd moved over, he'd met his wife Janet, and they'd get married in Achadui and settled there. And he was a farmer, a flax farmer, which was used to make linen and stuff, which Ireland was very famous for at the time. But he was really struggling, really struggling to make ends meet, and he decided they were going to emigrate to Canada. But that fell through. Sadly, that fell through because he couldn't get somebody to take on the lease. People wanted to buy it, they were interested in buying it but not rent it. And a friend of his who had moved over to Glasgow and got a job in the shipyards, he contacted him and said, look, if you're not going to Canada, why don't you consider coming to Glasgow? So he decided to do that. So the mother and father and the 9 children, Sam was 2 years and 3 months at the time, they sold up and they got a 3-bedroom flat in Glenruther Terrace in Dalmuir, which was big for the day. We were talking roughly about 1911.
Richard got a job in John Brown's shipyard in the Clyde, and when Sam was old enough, he went to Dalmuir Primary School. And it was round about the tenements in Dalmuir that Sam English was first seen kicking a ball about.
Sam English would soon follow in his father's footsteps. He left school at the age of 14, and his first job was as a grocer's boy. But his football career was starting to develop at that stage, and unfortunately that was incompatible with his role as a grocer's boy, because the grocer's boy required him to work at the weekend. So he spoke to his dad, and his dad recommended that he find himself a job in shipyards, and he did so, initially with William Beardsmore Limited, and then eventually he also moved on to work with John Brown, just like his father had.
Sam got a couple of games for Old Kilpatrick. Old Kilpatrick were one of the lower teams in the sort of junior setup, and he played a couple of games for Old Kilpatrick. But Sam moved to Port Glasgow, who were a sort of sturdy, and still are a sort of sturdy team, and immediately started scoring goals. And at the end of that season, he was headhunted by Yoker. So he was playing at a really, really good level with Yoker. He was 3 years at Yoker and scored nearly 300 goals. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. He was averaging 100 a season.
He was outstanding junior, and in them days, in intermediate days, and anybody was outstanding in that grade of football was bound to make it. A lot of players made in them days, but Sam was outstanding with Yoker.
I've kind of played junior for kind of 10 plus years now, since I've been about 18, 19, and we kind of played for similar clubs as well, and it was just kind of by chance I ended up playing with Yoker. I'm obviously local to Clydebank myself, and it wasn't until I was at Yoker I actually realised that that's quite, weird and significant in a way that we both played with them, like kind of almost 100 years apart. So in similar positions and stuff like that as well. I'm a forward too, which was kind of weird, so he couldn't really write it, I suppose.
On the last day of the season, they were playing up in Springburn that night. Of course, the scouts came and there was a queue of scouts outside. Yoker were set to lose about 6 or 7 players because they had a really good team. But the Yoker management singled Sam out and said, look, Arsenal want you. Herbert Chapman, the legendary Arsenal manager who was best pals with Bill Struth, has come up, he's in a hotel, he says, and he wants to speak to you. So Sam goes into the hotel and Herbert Chapman says, son, I've never seen you play, but I'd be a fool not to join the queue. He says, and what I'll do, he says, I'll give you a cheque. He says, and you can write the amount in. He says, I'll give you a blank cheque. He said, you'll be a star in London and we'll look after you, and you and your wife. And he was like, okay. So that was fine. So they shook hands and he said, I'll give you my decision in the morning. And he says, it was midnight before they eventually got to Ibrox, and one light on in the stadium, and it's Bill Struth's office. And he goes in and Bill Struth says, well, he says, Sam English scoring lots of goals, Scoring lots of goals. We want you here at Rangers. And he said, okay. And he says, well, do you want to hear the terms of your contract? And he went, no, it's fine. And he signed the contract and didn't realise how much he was getting. Got an envelope stuffed full of his signing on fee, put it in his inside pocket and left. And he was a Rangers player.
Sam English wasn't that the tallest of players. He was only 5'7", but he had great speed. He was really good in the air, and he offered a different dynamic to the strikers that they had there at the time.
I think when you look at the type of player he was, he had Olympic speed, that much is true. He was really well built, and that probably comes from his upbringing on the farms and on the shipyard. He'd always be using his arms, so his shoulders were really broad. Reading about him and looking at match reports, that's the type of player. He was an instinctive goal scorer. He always just knew where the goal was, whether it was a touch, hit. He was a powerful forward, could get in behind teams.
And he scored 2 goals in his debut. He missed the next 2 games. Jimmy Smith came in. I think Bill Struth was, you know, switching him about to see who would be the best one. Sam English came in for the 4th game against Morton at Ibrox. Rangers won 7-3 and English scored 5. You know, so in his first 6 league games, he scored a dozen goals. He scored in every game, scored a dozen goals. And then the next game was Celtic at Ibrox on September 1931.
It was one of these games where you would normally expect a lot of action. Old Firm match, 80,000 crowd, a lot of tension as always in these matches. But strangely in the first half of that match there was not a lot happening. Sam actually did have a chance, a fine header that just went past, and the Celtic goalkeeper John Thompson said to him, "Nice try, young fella."
A ball gets played through to Sam and it's kind of 50-50 who's going to... Sam's run from just inside his own half. So John Thompson, who in a newspaper interview a week or 2 before had said, he was given a coaching class on goalkeeping, and he had said the one thing a goalkeeper must not do is hesitate. If you make your mind up to come out for the ball, come for it or don't. And John Thompson at that time was a prince of goalies. He was just the best, right? And he was only kids, only 22. Sam English had just turned 23, so they were both boys, and they both went for the ball. Sam English got there first and nicked the ball past him, and it just kind of brushed the post and went past the post. His foot was planted, and John Thompson came diving out. It was completely fearless, come diving out for the ball. Sam had knocked it by him, and his head struck Sam English's knee, probably the strongest part of his leg.
There was an immediate recognition from players round about that it was a pretty serious accident. The crowd were jeering from the Eastern Terrace, and Davy Meiklejohn went out to calm them down, to highlight that this was not just an ordinary injury, there was something more serious had happened. Thompson was taken from the field. Most people around the incident could see that there was a fracture there, a depressed fracture in his skull.
They didn't know then that what would happen to John Thompson. He was taken to hospital at that point, and the game continued. But it was a bit of a kind of eerie, quiet, goalless draw. The game kind of petered out. The match didn't really materialise into anything of any substance.
Later that night, John Thompson tragically passed away in hospital. You know, just a kid, and Scotland regular, Celtic regular, and just one of the best goalkeepers around at the time. And it was just so tragic.
There was no suggestion of culpability in Sam English's part. None of the players around the incident presented any culpability on him for the accident. I think it's important to also highlight that following the incident, that John Thompson's parents asked to meet Sam English. In fact, they sent a message of good luck to him for his match immediately following the Celtic game. And 11 days after the accident, Davy Meiklejohn, Bill Struth and Sam English went up to see his parents at Garden Den because they wanted to console Sam English for the whole incident. And even the Celtic programme at that time came out with a statement saying that clearly there was no culpability in Sam English for the events. After the incident with John Thompson, Sam English continued to play that season and managed to continue the form that he'd shown in the early part and scored 44 league goals, which is a record to this day. It's doubtful whether it'll ever be surpassed.
As Sam English played throughout the country in different grounds, he would get unfair and totally wrong abuse from the terraces on being a killer and a murderer. He'd be booed every time he touched the ball.
Nowadays you would have a player welfare officer, you would have things get involved. These things just didn't exist back in the days. So he was left to his own devices, and I think by this time he was struggling mentally, struggling to get over what had happened.
Liverpool came in, paid 8,000, a record transfer fee for them, and off he went to Liverpool. I can see nothing but Sam English being Rangers' record goal scorer, and a record that would never be broken, because I think Sam English would have kept scoring, because he was young, fit, he was, you know, he worked hard, and he just knew naturally where the goal was, and he would score great goals, he would score headers, he scored every kind of goal. And had he been, there would have been no need for Sam English to move anywhere had that terrible thing not happened in September 1931, and I think he would have been on to become Rangers' greatest ever goal scorer.